I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your cattle market summary for the week ending February the 1st, brought to you by Cargill Vigor Tone. Part of being in the cattle business is dealing with things that are out of your control. It comes with the job. But when you feed Vigor Tone Mineral, there's one thing you can always count on: peace of mind knowing that your cattle are getting the nutrition that they need when they need it. Learn more at vigortone.com. The polar vortex passed on through, and thank goodness we had all those cattle out there ruminating and belching and causing the ozone to evaporate and causing all of this global warming, or it could have been even colder than what it was. But you know, 30, 40, 50 below zero regular temperature, that's about as cold as anybody wants to take. And we made it through. You know, I've said many times, it's the cold weather is not necessarily hard on cattle, but you know, those kind of temperatures are going to be hard on anything. But cold weather is not as bad on cattle as wet weather. And when it's wet and cold, that's one thing. But it was so cold that you couldn't have any moisture in it. It really made everything solid around, which is good and bad. It does shore up those muddy lots that everybody's been struggling with so long. But if it's lots that they've been walking in, it just makes them really sharp, and it hurts those cattle's feet to walk around. And I mean, you walk out there in muck boots and it'll go right through you. And it really makes it a tough kind of treading to get around. But that's just wintertime in a lot, and that's just the way it goes. But let's look at the board for last week. February live cattle futures on Monday up 35 cents, Tuesday up 7, Wednesday down 32. Thursday was a pivotal day. We saw your board open. It spiked up a lot higher and then shot back down and took back more than what it had gained earlier in the day. A lot of people, especially that study the charts and things, think that was very pivotal. And they think that may have been the spike or the high for the market for present time, for the near future. And if you look off over the bottom, you got your April trading a little bit higher than February, but then after that it just goes to nothing. But we'll see if that was a pivotal day or not. But down in New Orleans, where I was at the NCBA conference, a lot of people on Thursday talking about that and saying that it was very pivotal on the board, and we may have seen the high on your live cattle as far as the board goes. But Friday was up 65 cents, so we came back a little bit, but it may not reach the highs again that we had during the day that it posted, not closed, but posted on Thursday. But February live cattle futures ended the day at 125.45, which was actually down 60 cents for the week. Your April ended at 126.27, down 58 cents for the week. And like I was saying earlier, that April there, 126.27, that's the high until you go to February of 2020. And that's the highest that's posted, and that's at 118.27. So it's not looking very good, but we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. January feeder cattle, Monday was up 10, Tuesday down 82, Wednesday down 27, Thursday down 27. Friday, your January contract went off the board another quarter lower, ending the week and closing out that contract at 141.86, which was down $1.51 for the week. Your March at 142.52, down $1.10 for the week. So, you know, I was talking about that Thursday being pivotal and may not see it very high. We've kind of got two ways to look at this thing. Maybe the highs that were posted on Thursday but did not close that way, that may be the high that we see, and things may continue to fade out as we're going to start getting into more numbers that should be coming ready before long that were put on feed during the bigger runs back last fall, and then it'll continually get worse because of the the placements that we put on back in December. But at the same time, we're going to start running into more demand, and your packers are going to be working for more cattle to fill those orders that they've got as we get closer to spring. a lot of your retail outlets will be wanting to have plenty of stuff on the shelf for folks to get their freezers stocked up and get ready for the first bits of warmer weather where they can get out to their grill, which they really like to do, and folks will be chomping at the bit to do that after this cold winter we've had. So we're just going to have to see, because those two things are going to come together. And then also, once we start getting to where some of those bigger numbers of cattle should start hitting the market, that's when the results of all this mud and all this cold weather are going to be seen. And I don't think those cattle are going to be ready quite as quick. And we know those cattle are not going to be as heavy as what they might have been. And the loss of tonnage, the loss of performance on those cattle is going to be hard on your cattle feeders. Some of them may not close out anywhere near where we thought they were going to, but it should be able to give enough support in the market to stave off all that pressure. And you know, maybe a guy could look off out there in the board for spring and early summer and think that they're pretty far depressed from what things should be. But it'll be interesting to see, and that's what we're going to see, those two things coming together here in the next several weeks. Your fat cattle trade for this past week gained a little bit of ground, 124. Like we said, 125 has just been unattainable. We did see a few sales on a load here, a load there, in the northern plains on clean cattle, 125 and 126. And like I said, but your bulkier market in the southern plains in Kansas, which is really the establishment of your market, is going to be 124, and that's a buck higher than last week's whole number. But I doubt the weighted average comes in that much higher, because we had a pretty decent weighted average, well over 123 the previous week. But still a positive for the market. Your dress market mostly 198. But more 199 than just to scoff at. There's going to be some 199 in there, and that's a buck higher from the 197 we had established before that. Box beef cutout values, your average trade for last week, choice cuts 216.65, down 6 cents from the average trade of the previous week. Selects 212.64, up 88 cents from the average trade of the previous week. But your cutout values were lower late in the week, so we're not starting off very high going into this week. Choice select spread about $4, and 580 loads of cuts, trimmings, and grinds, which is just decent. Your slaughter, 567,000, which is down, but you just think how frigid it was in some of those places that have these major processing plants that just had trouble just operating. People had trouble getting to work, you know, when the schools are closed and their kids are at home by themselves, and it's hard to get employees there. And actually a great performance for the way things were, but 567,000, 17,000 less than the previous week, and 19,000 less than the same week a year ago. Remember that cattle on feed that was supposed to come out a week before this past? Now that the government has got back to going again, NASS has put out a schedule, and that cattle on feed that was for the January 1st inventories that was originally going to come out January 25th is now going to be released on February 22nd, which you would have thought maybe we would be getting February 1st numbers by then, but they're going to be put off until March the 8th. So it's going to take a lot of computers and a lot of computer nerds to keep all that information straight and be able to relate it back, but probably not going to make a big effect on the market the way that those numbers are going to be delayed and then coming out. But let's look at your feeder cattle markets. Real-time index on Cattle Market Central ended the week at 141.49, which was about $1 off of the previous week's end of the week numbers. So we lost about $1 on feeding cattle. And but if you look at that 141.49, compare that to the CME feeder cattle index that closed out, matching up with your January contract. It was at 141.86. So pretty darn tight in there on our real-time index and your cash feeder cattle index. And if you want to think of it being even tighter, here in a couple contracts, whenever they start letting all those flagged cattle in, the full, the fleshies, and all those. Most of those are derogatory terms which are being used the most. And when those cattle start going into the index too, it's going to be even closer to what your real-time index is, which puts all the steers in within that weight category that sell within a reasonable price of what the market is. But let's look at your cash market for feeder cattle last week. In your auctions, I mentioned that your RTI ended $1 lower for the week. Actually, your cash sales in your auctions were mostly steady, even on calves. But so many auctions were canceled or had very, very light receipts in the northern plains, which typically sell a little bit higher than the southern plains, that it did pull down on your 7-day moving average there from your real-time index. But most of your cattle sales were mostly steady in there somewhere, and we'd find a place that had a pretty good run, and then a place that would normally have a good run wasn't having a good run. A lot of sales were canceled, like I said, and just dangerously cold out there. One place they did have a sale on Thursday was Lamona, Iowa, and they had a good run there, 2,000 head for them. Crazy price that come out of there at Lamona. 92 head of 695-pound steers bring 166.85, and that was a couple of outfits that really needed and wanted the cattle pushing on them, and they're only going to find that in an auction sale. And people send cattle to the sale barn when the market's really, really good and it's really, really bad, because that's where you're going to get what the market's worth. And as volatile as sales are anymore, I don't know how anybody could pass up going to an auction, because some of these prices that they're getting, like the one I just mentioned, nobody would have guts enough to ask that for those cattle in the country, because would just seem to be something that's not realistic. And as volatile as markets are right now, nobody can keep up with the market. You can't hardly get a bid, accept the bid, ship the cattle, and weigh them and everything the same day. You don't know where you're at. It just moves too fast. So that's why we have auction markets. As long as you support them, then we're going to have a lot of liquidity in this market, and things won't be locked up like they are in the fat cattle trade, where you're not really sure what the market is and nobody knows where to price their cattle. But South Coffeyville, Oklahoma sold some calves at an impressive price. They're mixed up calves, mixed colored calves, 73 head of them, 574 pounds, $180. That's South Coffeyville, Oklahoma, and that's a premium like Sandhill, Nebraska price right there. Very good price right there. Creston, Iowa, they had a sale late in the week. I knew Tom Fry was not able to make it to the NCBA conference because he had to tend to business, take care of his own cattle, take care of his customers. But at Creston, Iowa, they had 56 head of 648-pound steers, bring 167.75. And then late in the week on Saturday, early afternoon, Fort Scott, Kansas had a heck of a sale. A lot of people wanted to get rid of their cattle. Things finally warmed up where they could get around and get something done. Over 4,000 head on offer in Fort Scott, Kansas. A lot of yearling type cattle there, and had the buyers that wanted them. 92 head weighed 803 pounds at 148.75, significantly higher than what your index levels are. But that's a look at your markets for last week. On the road, coming back from NCBA conference in New Orleans, headed to Minnetonka, Nebraska this week to speak with the Consolidated Beef Producers producer gathering there at the old sale facility that they turned into the hunting lodge. You guys know where it's at. But that's your markets for last week.